Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Live united.
Vivimos juntos.
We live united.
We live united. I live united.
Welcome to Live United. I'm your host, Milton Little. For the 6th year in a row, the number of homeless youth across the country has continued to rise. According to a recent Department of Education report, during the year 2013-2014, there were more than 1.3 million homeless students. Now that's only counting homeless students, and we know that there are many more homeless youth who are not in school. So, how bad is the problem in Greater Atlanta, and what can you do to help? Joining me today are Dr. Amy Redd, Vice President of Placement Services and Housing for Chris Kids. Chris Kids is a United Way partner agency that serves homeless youth and others. And Liz Danley, Project Manager with the United Way's Regional Commission on Homelessness. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So I'll start with you, Dr. Redd. Now, we talk about homeless youth, but homelessness for many people is defined by people living on the street. Are there other ways to think about homelessness?
Yes. Actually, there are roughly about 2,500 homeless youth that live in the metro Atlanta area. And a lot of those youth are not your atypical. You know, you think of people living on the street, walking the streets, those sorts of things. But we actually have youth who are couch surfing, living from place to place, that are kind of invisible. Oftentimes there's a stigma that comes along with that as well. So many times youth are not visible.
Mm-hmm. So say a little bit more about couch surfing, because I'm not sure people really understand what that means.
Sure. That basically means that you have a young person who is residing with someone else, and the reason why it becomes knowledgeable around couch surfing is because they're going from home to home, and oftentimes they're not sleeping in a bed, they're sleeping on someone's couch. And they move frequently from place to place, so they're very unstable.
So we think about homelessness sometimes from the standpoint of people losing their jobs or having some kind of economic circumstance, but what's behind homelessness among young people and children particularly?
Well, there's two major factors. One has to do with runaway, and the other one has to do with children or young adults aging out of the foster care system here in Georgia. The first, with runaways, oftentimes youth are running away from a violent situation, major family issues around sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, and so they run away in order to get away from those situations that are very harming to them. We have about, on the second note, we have about 600 children that age out of foster care every year.
What's that mean, age out of foster care?
Yes, that actually means that with the Department of Family and Children Services, when children reach a certain age to become an adult, they are aging out of foster care so that the state is no longer the provider or custodial of them. And so oftentimes they are leaving state custody to become adult and to become self-sufficient at some point, but a lot of the youth have experience a lot of challenges around that and become homeless. Usually within 6 months, 50% of those youth are homeless.
Thank you. This is a question for both of you, and then I'll start with you, Liz. We're talking about this primarily because November is National Homelessness Youth Month. Why do you think people just don't seem to get agitated by this whole issue about homelessness among young people?
Well, I think with homeless youth, it's just not as visible as it is with adults who are homeless and living under a bridge or on the street. Oftentimes they don't self-identify as homeless, and so I think people, if they can't see it, it doesn't exist, and so I think that's often the problem. But we do need to bring awareness to it because there are far too many kids who are homeless in schools, and you just wouldn't know it because they don't identify as that way.
Anything you'd add to that?
Sure. Normally, we do a homeless count every year. And in that homeless count in this area, there's typically around 1,300 children or young adults that we identify as being homeless. Typically up to the age of 24 is the population that we're talking about. In that population, it's not something that's visible, like Liz said, because typically during the count, we're counting this youth at night. But Chris Kids does a lot of street outreach also during the day. So we're estimating really there is an undercount of the youth who really need services.
It's even more concerning if we're not counting everybody.
That's right.
So Liz, what's United Way doing with partners like Chris Kids and others to address this problem?
Well, we have one primary initiative that we've really been focusing on for the last 2 years, and that's our Kids Home Initiative. It's in Cobb and DeKalb counties now. And so we're actually working with the homeless school liaisons, the school social workers. We're identifying the child in school, the ones who do identify, and working with them as our central point of origin. At that point, we connect with the families, we provide permanent housing, because what we're trying to do is really provide educational stability, keep that child in the school of origin, because once we can provide stability, they can perform better in school, not drop out, do things like that. So that's our primary, our goal and what we're doing in homelessness to work with homeless youth.
Now, I imagine you just offered a phrase that most people don't know, homeless liaison.
Yes.
Just what is that position in schools?
In schools, that's just a person who works to identify, work with that particular population of students in the school, provide services, connect them, provide that added support that they need, and then they're also our liaison to identify them and provide the comprehensive services they need and support. Teachers are aware and trained to notice signs of a student being homeless, who is homeless, and so working with them to end that stigma associated with it, and to notice and look for those signs in school.
Gotcha. Dr. Red, what else would you add? I mean, Chris Kids is really focused on these young people.
Yes, we are. And it is a major concern for us as we're working with the youth. We do have life coaches that work in the community, and we provide an array of services not only to provide shelter for the youth, but we also provide comprehensive services like counseling and career coaching, educational support and placement, GED preparation. These are just a few services that we work in collaboration with the school system or other partners in order to provide services for the youth so that they can sustain and have some sense of permanency moving into more of their adult years.
I can't imagine what it's like to be a young person on the street or just homelessness. I mean, what kind of stories can you share with our audience that give them a real good sense of what it's like for a young person, 14, 15, 16 years old?
Yeah, I'm thinking of one young woman in particular. She had suffered, well actually her family was 3 generations of child welfare involvement in their family. So there was multi-generational issues around abuse, sexual abuse, which she ended up being runaway because she was trying to escape that pattern of abuse that was a part of her family. And so she ended up becoming a homeless youth who was living on the street. And within just a few months, she was really taken into the domestic sex trafficking trade. And, spent some time in that, experiencing all of the issues that come around that with, sex trafficking, substance and alcohol abuse, and she was fortunate enough to find Chris Kids. And so when she came to Chris Kids, she was pregnant. And during her participation in our program, we were able to get her prenatal care, counseling, career counseling, educational support services, and long story short, she's been very successful. She is parenting her young son. She is working full-time. She received and earned a GED, and so it's been a big support for her.
Wow. And I know you must have some stories from the Kids Home Initiative
Absolutely.
that also
I'm
were
thinking
heartwarming.
about one particular person named Mary, and her teacher actually identified her. Her school performance began to decline, and so when she began to investigate a bit more, she realized that Mary, in fact, was homeless. They were living at an extended stay, and we conducted an outreach with the family, and once we were able to get them connected to permanent housing, we noticed that Mary's performance increased. We connected her to one of our partners, Community and Schools, to provide that educational support. And then they also had access to Oakhurst Medical Center, which is one of our medical partners. So they were able to get access to healthcare services. And after a while, once we started to have her stabilize, we saw her educational performance increase. And we actually adverted her. She ended up not becoming a school dropout. Her plan was eventually to drop out of school and help support the family. And so we were able to intervene at the right time and help Mary not to get to that point.
We probably have just about 2 minutes left. So if I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening to this and I feel motivated to do something, what can I do as a spectator to really make a difference?
Well, working at United Way, I'm a big advocate for people putting in their skills. Everyone has a select set of skills that they can offer, whether that be mentoring a family or just being able to sit down with them and provide those services. So volunteering and giving back their time to help fill the gaps that oftentimes we don't have in our services.
Gotcha. What's somebody able to do to make a difference?
I would add to that, because normally there aren't any funds to support homeless youth, and so just making a donation to be able to provide emergency assistance with clothing, basic hygiene needs, diapers for their young children, those sorts of things would make a big difference.
Thank you, Dr. Red. Thank you, Liz, for being here. Compassion and involvement can make a difference. I hear you saying that. If you or someone you know wants to help, or perhaps you even need help, you can email us at liveunited@unitedwayatlanta.org, or you can dial 211 from any phone and speak with someone in our call center. Not only is November National Homeless Youth Awareness Month, it's also a month when we celebrate our veterans. Up next, we'll hear from 2 female veterans working to make sure vets in Greater Atlanta have a place to call home.
My name is Angelica Solomon. I'm 25 years old from Columbus, Georgia, and I was a homeless vet. It was an opportunity to be financially stable and start a great career with wonderful benefits, and I really just loved the camaraderie. But it was something you had to live with every day, knowing that you were going to work, and today could be the day that a mortar came over that wall and that would just be it. And then, like, PTSD is kind of tricky because, like I said, you personally don't know that you're doing the things you're doing, or that the way you're reacting to things isn't the way you should be reacting to things. I decided to seek help with a vet counseling center during the relationship with me and my child's father. Like, our relationship had got to a point where we could not deal with each other. It got physical, verbal. I just didn't know how to react lightly to situations where people should just be able to talk them out. And he put me and our child out the house. It's scary. It's really scary because you don't know tomorrow if you're gonna have what you need to eat. I mean, a place to lay your head. I was worrying about what I was gonna do as far as financially to help support me and my child. And some days you actually get up and you're like, I need to do something, I need to change, but it's like your feet don't move. I went to a vet crisis center. I walked in one day and just asked for an appointment, and they gave me one with a counselor named Rachel. After a couple sessions, was diagnosed with PTSD, and then shortly after that, I started going and seeing her on a regular basis, and things kind of got easier. I got a bit more of an insight on what was going on with me and how to deal with it, how to develop it into something that I can use. United Way helped me out by getting me into permanent housing and giving me a position on their pro team. I mean, I'm doing something I love to do, which is reach out and help people. Like I said, that's one thing that I do like about the Pro Team and with United Way. Like, you reach out and you actually pulling people in and saying, we got you, we understand.
Welcome back to Live United. The video you just watched is a testimonial from Angelica Solomon. She was a single mom, and she's just one of the homeless veterans United Way of Greater Atlanta has helped to find their own home and to get back on the path to self-sufficiency. Joining me now are Lindsay Williams and Julia Kelly, veterans themselves who have dedicated their lives to helping women like Angelica and other homeless veterans. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Lindsay,
having
we'll
us.
start with you. Tell us a little bit about your service background.
Well, I've served for about 9 years. I went to the Air Force Academy, and then I was on active duty for 5 years after that. And I transitioned out of the military in 2012. So my husband and I have lived here in Atlanta ever since. And that's a little bit about. I was in the Air Force, so
Well, thank you.
Go Air Force.
And you've got a pretty compelling story yourself. You, in fact, were once homeless, weren't you?
That is correct. I am a former Army veteran, but in January of 2012, I had worked a job for 12 years, and I got to work as I did every day, and I was called into the office about 7:30 and 7:45. 12 years were gone. And they gave me a nice severance. I had saved a little, but life continued to happen, and I eventually ran out of money. I didn't have a job. I stayed in school. And I found myself with an eviction notice. And I didn't have any, I had somewhere to go, but because I had been the champion for my daughter, I just wouldn't allow, pride wouldn't allow me to go to her for help. So I couch surfed. I didn't have a nighttime dwelling for a minute. And it just happened that way. But it was interesting, while I was in school, this was happening while I was in school. And that's when I met someone interesting from the United Way, Kente Rollins. He heard me say I didn't have a job. And Kente asked me to meet him at the United Way that following Monday. And I did. And I've been there ever since. And I started off with the Pro Team. And that's what I love about him. It was veterans giving back to veterans outside of my scope. Anything I had ever done. I found myself in soup kitchens, under bridges, helping finding homeless veterans. I've been here ever since.
So we hear a lot about there just being a significant number of veterans on the street in Atlanta for all kinds of reasons. Did you run into other veterans who were homeless during your time?
I ran into many veterans that were homeless during my time. And it was shocking because you would think there had to be another system, or why are you here?
Right.
Why are you at this most destitute place, the street?
And you're asking yourself, you're asking them that.
I'm asking them while I'm in the midst of this, you know, and it's like, okay, reality check. But I got it. They didn't have the barrier I had. I just didn't have a place to sleep at night. Their barriers were deeper. There were trust issues. They didn't trust people. They had elements of mental health going on, the PTSD, the fear factor, the factor that they didn't want to adhere to restraints and rules. I just wanted out. Right. I wanted normacy. But that's a barrier that we deal with in that particular population.
So why have you two decided to get out there and try to make a difference, Lindsay?
Well, I guess for me, when my husband and I transitioned out of the military, we both had college educations. We both had family that we could rely on, so it made our transition easier. But I can see where that transition could be really hard for people if you don't have those support systems in place. And so I want to help those veterans that are coming out and don't have those resources to connect them to the available resources here in Atlanta and really help them make that successful transition. It's been fun for me as a vet to meet other vets that are going through that process because I feel like I can connect with them on a different level than people who haven't served, can ask questions, understand what they're talking about when they talk about their military service or their career field or their deployments or the challenges they faced. I'm able to have some deeper conversations and really help them think about the next steps. So for me, it's in the military, we took care of our airmen, we take care of our troops, and for me, that doesn't end when you get out of the military. That's a value that I've carried through, and so is my husband after the military, and I want to continue to do that.
You could have gone back to your old life. Why did you decide to get on the street and try to help people?
It was such a humbling experience. It took one day for me to go out there to say, I can't do anything else. I have got to go out there and make a difference, because although I'm here, I'm not all the way there, and it's only one paycheck, one experience, one meltdown, one breakdown. Right. So I have got to go out here and do this. And as Lindsay said, it is great, and it's a unique system that the United Way has with our pro team, because it's veterans helping veterans, a language that they understand. And it's so much different when you have someone outside of the network of the military talking to you, because they can't really relate to everything. And so that's why we're so unique in what we do in our homeless department.
So I want to go back to something you said before. When you came out, you had a support system. You were able to make that transition. I mean, we're talking about America's best and the brightest. These are the strongest young people we have, and they go out and serve. But what happens when that moment comes and they're back out on their own? And how do things just fall apart like that?
It could be for any number of reasons. People are coming back with invisible wounds, physical wounds or invisible wounds, that may not be receiving the proper care. Or, there's a lot of really unique career fields in the military that don't have a direct path into civilian life. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I was a contracting officer in the military. There's a civilian job for that. I can come out and write contracts on the outside so the military can purchase things. But there's a lot of career fields that aren't like that. So a lot of, especially young troops coming out, don't have that direct career path. They're thinking, okay, if I had all this military training, how does that relate to a civilian role? Where do I start? Mm-hmm. And so knowing where to start and knowing how to get access to the resources with the GI Bill or at the VA, those can be really complex things to navigate. And I mean, even with the GI Bill, my husband and I had to navigate that system for him. It's extremely complex. So you really have to be able to have resources in place to help you with those transitions.
So Julia, we had about 500 homeless veterans who were helped last year. And the goal is up this year, 600 or so. So what are the services that are being provided to these veterans on the street that are going to get them on a path to self-sufficiency?
There's a number of services there, but the main service that we try and make sure is there is housing them first. Okay. Housing and case management. Because if we can remove that barrier of where am I going to lay my head tonight, and connect them with resources, then they can move. They can begin to reintegrate back into society. So our main goal is to house them first and get them connected with case management. We do that through a number of partnerships. We do that through the SSVF grant.
Say what that is.
And that's Supportive Services for Veteran Families grant. It's a grant that we received from the VA. Mm-hmm. And it just started again October 1st, so we have a new set of monies to make a difference to get to that 600.
Do we have any estimates of how many veterans are homeless on the streets here in Greater Atlanta?
Because this population is so hidden, our last data was between 1,500 and 2,000. Okay. But they're hidden.
Gotcha. Hidden where?
In the trenches, in the soup lines, under the bridges.
And there are people who are used to some hardship. So,
right.
I mean, so does that make them more likely to think they can survive in that hardship on the street? Or?
They use what they learned from their military skills to survive. Right. But that only goes so far.
Gotcha. So, and you talked a little bit about mental health issues and other things. Are those primarily in the hidden wounds. Are those primarily the reasons why folks wind up homeless?
That's a good question. I think it's a pretty good mix of all different sorts of things. There's, people's family life play into that as well when they're going into the military, when they're coming out of the military, but I would say that's a big part of it.
I think it's a big part as well. And one thing we have to remember, when they leave home, they are so normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we endure, what we see, given the time that we serve. And when we come back, sometimes our families can't handle it.
Right.
Or while we've been gone, our families, maybe they've died out, maybe they've moved. And then our coping skills coming back can be a threat to our families because they don't know how to process what we are not processing.
So for those veterans who are sitting watching this show, what do you tell them? What do you say to them that will get them from watching to actively involved as you two have? Lindsay, what's your invitation?
My invitation is, as a veteran, you understand best what other veterans that are struggling are going through. You can have a conversation with them and they can tell you about their military experience, and you can dive down deep to some of those root issues, and because they will trust you because you're a veteran. And I've experienced that firsthand myself this year. It's been beneficial for me and for the veterans that I've been involved with. There's so many opportunities with United Way to do so many different things. You can come and pick what your strength is and get paired up with a veteran through mentorship programs. They're starting a new mentorship program this year, or through a lot of the different social enterprises that United Way partners with. There's so many opportunities. Just come and connect with a veteran because it's going to make your life better.
We've got just a few seconds left. Julia, what's your invitation?
My invitation is give back. Give back and remind the veterans out there, as you've received help, that where there's life, there's hope.
Well, good. Thank you both for being here. You're making a difference in your lives. You've made a difference in your service. And now giving back is something that we can all be proud of. Thank you for the opportunity to share your story. If you want to know more about veterans homelessness and youth homelessness and how you can get involved, visit our website, unitedwayatlanta.org. You can also email us at liveunited@unitedway.org or tweet us at UnitedWayATL. Thanks for watching Live United, and we'll see you next time.